Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 58 of Buhaa's Block. On today's episode, we're going to be doing a quick recap of Lakers Bucks, my 3 takeaways from the game because I did not do a post-game reaction last night, and then getting into a mailbag. I posted last night on both YouTube and Twitter that I would be taking your mailbag questions. So we have some questions to get into, particularly with the fallout of the Lakers Bucks game and Quincy Olivari stealing the show in the fourth quarter and leading the Lakers to a comeback victory. And before we get started, I just wanted to say quickly, apologies again for no post-game reaction last night. I have tried to stick to every single game, and I think up to this point I have. I've maybe missed one game since I've started off the top of my head, but I'm here in Henderson, Nevada with my son, and with the Lakers having 6 road preseason games, several, or at least a couple in different states. I am skipping a couple of them, the Milwaukee one, and then right now, tentatively the San Francisco one, but I might end up skipping the Phoenix one and going to the San Francisco one. But skipping a couple preseason games, but getting some quality time in with my son. And yes, last night we had to do homework and soccer practice and stuff. So what was on daddy duty, and so that took precedence over post-game reaction and what was not watching the game live. But I did rewatch the game. I actually watched the first half a couple times, and I have some thoughts for you guys. So let's get into it. And as a reminder for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and like and comment on this video if you enjoy it. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. All right, so my thoughts on the Lakers' first win of the preseason, a 107-102 fourth quarter comeback win against the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee. This was a game that the Lakers were not thrilled to be playing. They had agreed to a home-and-home with the Bucks last season, and the teams that are actually in charge of making their own preseason schedule. And right now, the Lakers cannot play games at Crypto.com Arena because it is currently under renovations, in part because the Clippers left and they're redoing some of the locker room stuff and some of the tunnel stuff. But so Crypto.com is under renovation. The first game that the Lakers will play there will be opening night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So because of that, they've had to play 2 games in Palm Springs, which they've done the last couple of years. So that's par for the course with that. But 2 games in Palm Springs, this game against Milwaukee, which last year Milwaukee came to LA, and then they have a Vegas game, which they also have done the last couple of years. And then they close out the preseason against the Phoenix Suns and against the Golden State Warriors in a road back-to-back, which is just, I've never heard of a preseason back-to-back, let alone a road back-to-back. But that's, I mean, as JJ Redick said, it's not an ideal preseason for the Lakers. But this game to me, so Lakers were down 6 at halftime with their semi-regular rotation. No Austin Reeves. He rested this one due to ankle soreness. Also, Max Christie, Cam Reddish, and Gabe Vincent were all on minutes restrictions due to the team just managing their workload. So not necessarily a normal rotation in that sense. And so Max gets the start with Austin out. And I really liked how that looked. And I will touch on that a little bit later in both a takeaway and one of the mailbag questions. But Max pressuring Dame Lillard 94 feet and hounding him, like I thought, and hit a couple threes, had a dunk in transition. Like I thought Max played really well in his limited stint. But yeah, quickly box score stuff like 11 points, 8 rebounds, a steal, 3 blocks, had an incredible block on Giannis, the type of block that maybe only Victor Wembanyama could do, where Giannis got a step on AD, and I was like, oh, he's about to dunk on AD, he's about to at least draw a foul on him, and AD blocks him, and it was remarkable. Hit a couple of jumpers over Brook Lopez, like went 0 for 4 on threes. I like the volume. Obviously, you'd like to see at least one of those go down, but his jumper was good in this game outside of beyond the arc. Was 5 for 10 inside the arc and had a few jumpers over Brook Lopez. Rui had I thought, considering like the Giannis matchup is difficult for everybody, and Rui was the primary guy on Giannis. And there was a couple times Giannis got him in transition, but in a half-court setting, when Rui was able to square his shoulders up and try to stay in front of Giannis, I thought he did a reasonably good job in that, with that difficult assignment. So 14 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals. For Rui, I thought he was active. He got out in transition a couple times, hit a couple threes. LeBron, 11 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Got a tech late in the second quarter for fouling, or for complaining about a non-call that I thought was clearly a foul. But quiet LeBron game by his standards. But like, again, preseason, he only played 16 minutes. D'Lo, 6 points, 6 assists. Struggled from shooting the ball, 3 for 10, 0 for 3 on threes. But I thought helped get the Lakers back into the game in the third quarter before he sat for the night. And then off the bench, Dalton Connect played a team high 34 minutes and had 13 points and 8 rebounds, including 6 offensive rebounds. And I thought he did a brilliant job of corner crashing and really exposing the Bucks' lack of rebounding on the perimeter and just lack of athleticism on the perimeter in some regards. So Dalton struggles from the floor, 5 for 16 overall, 2 for 10 on threes. Missed a bunch of good looks on threes, but I like that he was aggressive. But the 6 offensive rebounds were pivotal. Lakers had 17 overall as a team, 4 assists also for Dalton. So Dalton is continuing to... He's not shot the ball up to the expectations, but he is finding ways, particularly with rebounding, and I think his defensive activity. Like he got blown by a couple times, but his challenging guys at the rim, and he ended up with 5 fouls. But I think one was an offensive foul. I've really been impressed with his ability to contest at the rim and at least make things difficult for guys, right? So you got to go up with some force, right? But I think Dalton has done a pretty solid job with that so far, and has been rather aggressive in terms of his rotations and contesting, and he's just been unafraid. And I think that's like half the battle sometimes with guys, is just not being just having the fearlessness to go up to block a shot. And let me see. He didn't have a block, but I liked his. So far, I've really been impressed with his ability to contest shots around the rim, even if it has led to fouls. I like the aggression. Then Quincy Olivari was the star of the game. Was a team best plus 20. Technically, our Mel Traore was also a team best plus 20, but he shared the 9 minutes with Quincy Olivari. But Quincy Olivari, 11 points in 9 minutes, 3 threes. 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Technically didn't have a steal, which felt like he had at least one, but forced an 8-second violation, forced a couple of bad passes, forced a couple of turnovers, guys dribbling off their legs with his ball pressure. And I think the big thing for me with Olivari was just the energy. It was an infectious energy that this was a rather boring game for the most part, outside of there was some Giannis LeBron moments in the second quarter where Giannis blocked LeBron, and then LeBron went back at him to try and block him and ended up fouling him. This was a rather dreary, boring game until Quincy Olivari came into this game, and I'm going to talk about him with one of my takeaways, but I just really think he flipped the game on its head. So with all that said, let's get into our takeaways. Takeaway number 1 is the Lakers' exact revenge in the Bad Blood Bowl. And this was a game entering it. You have all these different storylines of it's JJ Redick coaching against Doc Rivers, his former coach, who he's gone at publicly a couple times, most notably on First Take when he said that Doc never takes accountability and that he's always pointing the finger elsewhere. Then Doc has said some stuff about JJ. So you have that whole dynamic. You have Darvin Ham on the Bucks coaching staff, sitting right next to Doc Rivers. And you have JJ replace Darvin Ham. Darvin has had several shots taken at him by players during media day and training camp and even post-game and practice availabilities. So it's been quite the list of guys that have taken shots and the types of shots that have been taken at Darvin. Then he speaks to ESPN at the game and defends his tenure and references the turnaround from an improvement perspective, like record-wise. Also, that several guys got paid under his watch, and defends that. You have Doc also defending Darvin and saying that he shouldn't have been fired based on his track record. Also saying that coaches pour a lot into players and it often is like an unrequited love, caring and dynamic. And so you just said all this stuff. And then to say nothing of like Lakers players and how they feel about Darvin. And that was a lot of coaching drama and storyline entering this one. And for a while, it looked like Doc and Darvin were going to get the better end of this matchup. And Quincy Olivari saves the day for JJ Redick. JJ got the game ball because it was his first win as a head coach, but really it should go to Quincy Olivari for saving the day with that fourth quarter performance. And there was something poetic to me about Rui Hachimura and Max Christie starting in this game and both playing well and both playing the type of roles that felt like they could have played last season, especially earlier in the season. So it's like Austin Reeves is out. Start Max Christie. Don't start Cam Reddish, or don't overthink it and start different. Like start your next best shooting guard. And Rui is your third best front court player. Start that guy. So there was like that dynamic. But I thought Max he hit a three early. I want to say he scored all 8 of his points in the first quarter. I could be wrong on that. But I want to say like Rui and Max both had multiple field goals early on in this game. And I felt that the way that they were playing, they both had a little extra juice for this matchup. But Quincy Olivari, getting JJ Redick his first win and it coming against Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham, and it also coming in the form of a Doc Rivers team blowing a double-digit lead. Granted, it was Bucks third string against Lakers third string and even Lakers fourth string in some regards. But like, a win is a win. It's the preseason, and the Bucks had a double-digit lead in the second half, and they blew it. Milwaukee's switching style defense did cajole the Lakers into taking some, going ISO heavy at times, and I think the execution of the offense wasn't great and wasn't even good for stretches. Especially, I didn't like that early second quarter stretch of Jackson Hayes, LeBron, Rui, Cam, and D'Lo. I think Cam and Jackson probably shouldn't play together because of their lack of gravity and just the relatively limited nature there. But Cam and Jackson probably shouldn't play together just because of their lack of gravity and some of the spacing concerns. But outside of that, like I thought for the most part, the team, the process was right in the first half. The execution could have been better. There was some sloppiness. There was some dribble handoffs into offensive fouls, some unnecessary turnovers and just carelessness that I think that the team can work on just as a whole. But I thought it was like, again, poetic for me is the word of the Lakers beating the Bucks, JJ getting his first win against Doc, against Darvin. That to me, like this meant a little bit more, I think, to the Lakers, to JJ, to some of the players. Takeaway number 2 was I really liked Max Christie as part of the starting backcourt. And as I've said, I really want to see Austin and Max in particular in the backcourt. And I think that you could make a case that could theoretically be the Lakers' best starting backcourt combination. I like Austin and LeBron more as a pairing and D'Lo and AD more as a pairing. But if you're going to have LeBron out there, I kind of like having Austin paired with him and is more like that secondary ball handler. Now, obviously, when D'Lo's out there, he's going to be running the show a little bit more. But when Austin's been out there, the Lakers have actually ran the offense more through Austin through the first couple games than D'Lo when those two have both been on the floor, especially with LeBron. So that's just something to kind of monitor. But I liked having Max pressuring Damian Lillard, because that would have been Austin Reeves pressuring Damian Lillard, and then that takes away Austin's energy and legs offensively. So whether it's Austin or D'Lo, having Max in there, I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Lakers are like the plan. I mean, JJ said it, and the plan, to my understanding, is to keep going with Austin and D'Lo. But Max in there with the athleticism, the length, the rebounding, the versatility defensively, the ability to pressure 94 feet. I really liked the way that looked. It looked exactly as I thought it would. And you do lose some ball handling. Like Max had a couple of plays where he tried going downhill and driving and kicking to teammates, and those passes got deflected and stolen. So the playmaking on ball part for Max is still in development, and I still think he looks a bit away from being a consistent, like, night to night ball handler playmaker type, right? Like he's just not that right now. And so I don't think this is going to happen, right? I don't think Max is going to steal the starting spot from Austin or D'Lo. But whether it's a closing look to quarters or halves or games, I would like to see this combination more of Max in the backcourt next to one of those two. And again, I would lean Austin and Max, especially when factoring in the big picture context of D'Angelo Russell might be traded at some point. I think it's a bit of a cleaner process having Austin start. I know some people are going to bring up the Ginobili comparison and last year, and like, I get it. I just think Austin's game translates better to the playoffs. I think he's the better player, and I think he's the player more likely to be here past the trade deadline. But regardless of if it's Austin or D'Lo next to Max, I'd like to see more of those lineups in general. I thought Max looked really good in that role. I was glad to see that Max got elevated and not Dalton or Cam or Gabe. That, like, it was a proper slotting. It was a proper, like, that's the guy who should have been starting if Austin's out. So I thought overall that was a success. And then third thing was Quincy Olivari. I mean, just an incredible showing. Like, that was one of the best preseason performances I've seen from a non-roster guy. And maybe that's recency bias, but to me, I can't remember he's like what, the 17th to 18th man on this team? Not even, because they have multiple two-way guys. So, like, I mean, yeah, I guess like 19th guy on the roster technically comes in and swings the fourth quarter dramatically, where the Lakers go on a 20-0 run with him at the helm, pressuring 94 feet, hitting threes, clapping and galvanizing and energizing the bench. It was just incredible. It was remarkable. It was brilliant. Like, any adjective you want to use, like, it was wild. And I think seeing D'Lo and LeBron in particular really enjoying it and really championing him, and LeBron posting on his Instagram about it. And there was the moment at Media Day, or the photo at Media Day with Quincy and LeBron that went viral of, like, who's number 41. That was just such a cool moment. And that, like, I was already having FOMO not being at the game because I'm so used to being at every game. But that was like one of those moments where I was like, damn, like, I really wish I was there in person to experience that. And we're going to get into Quincy and the potential of him being on the team during the mailbag. I'm still skeptical of that, let's just say. But I mean, I think he deserves more opportunity at a minimum, right? Like, so I would like to see him now get a first half shift in the game Tuesday against the Warriors. I would love to see him get a first half shift with the regular rotation. I would love to see Quincy get 3-4 minute shift with several of the regulars and just see what that looks like before I make a decision in any direction with him, right? But I think the biggest takeaway, though, and this is something that JJ kind of touched on after the game, is this is the blueprint for how a lot of the Lakers back end roster guys should be playing. And I'm specifically talking about Bronny, JHS, and Maxwell Lewis. I think all three of those guys should look at this performance and really study it and internalize it and try to apply it, because before Quincy came in, In the second half, they were going with Bronny as a point of attack guy, 94 feet, ball pressure guy, and Jalen. And if you look at the way that Quincy defends and the energy and the tenacity and putting his arm, he's hand checking. He picked up a foul immediately. He comes in, immediately picks up a foul, but he's setting a certain tone. And so puts his arm on the hip, which you can't do that anymore, or the same way you used to be able to, but doesn't care. Like he does it, and then he goes right back to doing it. And you just look at, like, with Bronny and JHS, it feels like, or it felt like upon watching it, like they were in the airspace, but they were, the ball handler had just enough room to dribble and kind of get into the offense. And it was like, they're kind of bothering him, but they're not really dictating terms. Quincy Olivari was dictating terms. He was making guys give the ball up. He was causing turnovers. He was disrupting and just blowing up the Bucks offense in the fourth quarter. So we'll see what happens with him. We'll see how the rest of the preseason goes. We'll see. Maybe he makes the Lakers on a two-way situation. I doubt he makes the 15-man roster. But if nothing else, I think really Jalen and Bronny in particular are like, need to look at that and be like, if this dude who is no more physically gifted than us, like he's got the cross country background, and obviously he's incredibly quick, so that helps with your point of attack defense and tracking guys and sticking with guys. So I'm not going to say like he's probably quicker than Bronny and JHS, but Bronny and JHS both have their own physical gifts. I mean, Bronny is an incredible athlete. JHS has great size for the point guard position and is a big, strong, sturdy guard. So like, I'm not like, we should not downplay those guys' physical tools in terms of, at the point guard spot. So if those guys played with 70 to 80% of what Quincy Olivari was bringing during that shift, and it's a different situation. Like, he's playing for his NBA future. So you expect that those types of guys to be playing at like an 11 out of 10 in terms of like energy and focus, and Bronny and JHS have guaranteed contracts, right? So like, just from a human nature perspective, it's going to be a little bit different. But at the same time, if Bronny and JHS want to be back end rotation guys on this team, there is somewhat of an opening if you can kick that door down, and if they can play with that type of tenacity or an energy and the clapping and the getting the bench into it, and just like all the stuff that Quincy Olivari brought, like that would, I think it would do wonders for either one of those guys. And we know JHS is kind of more of an offensive guy anyway, but I think if he can incorporate that in Bronny, this is his calling card is defense and hounding guys in 94 feet. Like, I think he could learn something from that as well. So that was my biggest takeaway, is not necessarily what happens with Quincy. And again, maybe we have a different conversation next week, depending on how he looks in the remainder of the preseason. But to me, it was more of like a wake up call for the other young guys on this team of, this is the energy and the spirit and the tenacity and the fearlessness and the aggression that you need to play with on a nightly basis. And I thought the positive thing was he galvanized that group in the fourth quarter. It wasn't just him. Like, you saw Armel Traore make some plays. I thought Colin Castleton progressively played better. Maxwell Lewis made some plays, and he was someone who I thought benefited from that energy. Dalton Connect was all over the place, as I said earlier. Like, he had the 6 offensive rebounds, and I thought his energy was great. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just like, the young guys need to take something from this, and really that's like the model for how all of them should be playing. But enough about last night's game. Let's get into the mailbag. Question number 1 from @burner_literal. What did you think about Max filling in for Reeves? I think he did great. He did. So as I just touched on it, but I think the one thing I'll add to it is, I think that I've said this before, and I feel like it goes without saying, but I'm going to continue to say it. Like, preseason, all the necessary caveats apply, and small sample size, all that stuff. But to me, it showed me that the Lakers offense can function with a 3-and-D type of guard in that backcourt spot, especially with AD now being a more of a fulcrum of the offense and them running more of the offense around the elbows and with those double horns actions and dribble handoffs and side to side, almost like a 3-man weave type thing that they've been doing. And it could easily be Max. It could also be them trading for a better version of Max and then having Max come off the bench. Of course, again, I think Max should be playing a lot, should be playing 25 minutes a night, has the upside to be the Lakers' best bench player or most impactful bench player. And I think so far what we've seen through the first 3 preseason games has only confirmed that. I think the shot selection could be improved upon. I think the ball handling, probably you still don't want him ball handling and playmaking a lot, but when he does the other things like take open threes, run the lane in transition, rebound, defend, I think he's done all those things really well, and I think he's been at or above expectations up to this point. Question 2 from Lakers Venice 1848. Options with Cam Reddish / vet mins and roster gymnastics for any surprise developments, like signing someone for $44K, nervous emoji. At least I think that's the nervous emoji or sweating emoji, whatever. Lakers are in a tough spot, and you cannot sign someone for 44,000. The Knicks had their situation, but they were able to add money to people, so they're technically making above. There's a bit of a loophole there, but you're not signing someone to a $44,000 contract that's below the vet minimum threshold. And then on top of that, the Lakers don't have an empty roster spot on the official roster. They have 15 guys. So what the Lakers could do in terms of creating a roster spot would be trade dumping a guy to, I think the most realistic one would probably be Utah. But salary dumping, let's say attach a 2nd round pick plus a Cam Reddish, a Christian Wood. I don't think it would be Jackson. It would probably be one of those 2 guys, or maybe, I don't know, Maxwell Lewis, maybe. But one of those types of guys, attach a 2nd round pick to a team with an empty roster spot and with enough cap flexibility where they're not pushing into either the 1st or 2nd apron upon taking that player. And that would open up a roster spot and some flexibility under the 2nd apron, which right now the Lakers are under 50K, they're less than a 50K gap between them and the 2nd apron. So that's really it for the Lakers in terms of it. Like, you could also do a 2-for-1, and the veteran minimum aggregation rules are kind of complicated, but you can't add them 2 together to like meet a certain player's contract. And you also can't add, I believe, the 2 alongside like a Gabe or Vando or something to let's say get to like 15 million or close to that. But also remember, the Lakers can't take back more money than they send out in any trade based on the current apron limitations. So really the Lakers are in a tough spot. They probably have to do a dump a player or do a 2-player dump or a 2-for-1, something like that. In terms of getting guys off the roster to open up a roster spot. But that's really it. And to do that, you're going to almost certainly have to attach draft capital unless you are trading a JHS or a Maxwell Lewis, where there could be a team out there that believes in them as 2nd-year guys. And I don't think the Lakers would trade JHS and just give up on him less than, technically not even into his 2nd season. And with Maxwell Lewis, I don't know what type of market he would actually have. So realistically, it would have to probably be Cam Reddish or Christian Wood, and that would require most likely at least a 2nd round pick, if not maybe a top 40, top 45. Like you can get creative with the protections with that. I'm sure the Lakers wouldn't want to just give away a 2nd round pick, but if you can do like a top 40 protected 2nd round pick, or technically, the top 10 picks of the 2nd round, something like that. But that's really it for the Lakers is, and one thing, just to clear this up, like you cannot waive a guy and then sign someone else. Given the CBA rules, if you waive a guy, that money will stay on your cap. So the Lakers would have done that in the summer if they could have gotten away with it. So those guys have guaranteed contracts, and they would have to be traded to open up a roster spot to sign somebody. Next question from @Matthew Hurtado 6968. Out of the 2-way / 10-day contract guys on the roster tonight, who do you think has a chance to get pulled up this season or next? Olivari showed out. Well, the first guy that comes to mind is Christian Koloko, and we don't have an update yet on him and his availability. As of now, he has still not been cleared by the NBA's return to play protocol, so that is something to monitor is just his availability. But once he's cleared, or if he's cleared, I do expect him to be in competition with Jackson Hayes for the backup center spot, or at least get some reps there. Maybe garbage time, and then if he performs well, get into that conversation for backup center, or even playing next to Jackson or AD. The Lakers are high on him and his potential. So Christian Koloko to me is a guy that I think if he can get cleared and perform at the level that the Lakers believe he can perform at, he is someone who could potentially earn a back-end rotation spot. And because of the two-way contract situation, obviously there's going to be a limit in terms of how many games he can play. But I think he has a chance to, at least for stretches of the season, be in the rotation mix potentially. And then beyond that, as of now, I don't see Colin Castleton or Armel Traore being rotation caliber bigs. Could be wrong on that. I mean, Traore has the athleticism and the energy. I just think some of the raw, like the shot is not there, and he is a bit raw. I mean, he had a nice drive and finish against the Bucks, but I think he's a little bit undersized for like a center, because to me he's more of a center than a 4, and I don't think either one of those guys is quite ready for rotation minutes. Like, maybe throw them in garbage time and just see how they do, and progressively play them a little bit more. Like, if Jackson gets injured and Christian's still out, then you're kind of forced to play those guys. But I don't see either of them being necessarily ready for rotation minutes right now. Olivari, if he makes the roster, or if he makes earns a two-way spot, that's someone that it's tough, just because, and this is where I think we got to pump the brakes a little bit. Like, looking at the Lakers roster and what they need, they are so deep on the perimeter, and specifically at point guard. You could technically call LeBron a point guard, but even if you don't want to, all right, you got D'Lo, you got Austin, you got Gabe, you got Bronny, who's going to be in the mix, you got JHS, who's going to be in the mix. I just don't see where Quincy plays. Like, you could tell me he outperforms JHS and Bronny, but you still have Gabe, Austin, and D'Lo and LeBron as primary ball handlers. As I said, I think he deserves an opportunity to play in the first half. He earned that, in my opinion. Give him a rotation spot in the first half, even if it's a 3 or 4 minute shift. See how he performs, and if he performs well, then maybe the next preseason game it's a 5 or 6 minute shift, and if he performs well again, then maybe it's an 8 to 10 minute shift in that last preseason game, just to kind of see how he fits in and what combinations work around him. Because right now we've only seen it in fourth quarter garbage time against the Bucks' third and fourth string guys. Like, I want to see it against the Warriors or the Suns in more kind of normal rotations, more normal competition, and also playing alongside the Gabes and the D'Los and the Austins and the Maxes. So I mean, that's one thing, but I still just think, for as impressive as he was, and again, I said it might have been the most impressive stint I've seen from like the 19th man on a team in a preseason game, I struggle seeing how he earns a real rotation spot unless there's a mega trade and D'Lo's gone or Gabe's gone, and he has to outperform Bronny and JHS, which I think he has so far just in that 9 minute stint, but like consistently do that. I think if he was a wing, if he was 6'6", if he was 6'10", I think he has a really good shot at making, earning a two-way spot, and potentially even Lakers figuring out a way to get him on the roster if he had made that type of impact. But as a small guard, with again the caveat that it was very impressive, maybe he earns a two-way contract based on the rest of his play in the preseason and in camp. But for now, I think that the more realistic, scenario would just be him either being on the South Bay Lakers and having a prominent role there, or maybe another team scooping him up and saying like, this is a guy we need on a 2-way contract. So that's something to monitor, but he's the guy to monitor over the next couple games, just in terms of his production. And does he come back down to earth? And does he have a pedestrian game next game, or does he keep this going? Does he keep this momentum going? And does this vault him into a 2-way spot? And I doubt a 15-man roster spot, but you never know. I mean, if he continues to play like that and play out of his mind, it's going to be a conversation. Next question from @Mr. Messenger. What's the latest talk about getting a center? A Kessler or Nick Richards wouldn't require a rotation level guy, but might be heavier on picks. So this is a question in response to a report by ESPN's Shams Charania that the Lakers are now in the market or exploring the market for a center upgrade, given the injuries to Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood, and the fact that Christian Coloco has not been cleared by the NBA to play basketball yet. And I would say the response to this report has been interesting, because some people have been surprised by it when I think this was rather obvious. Maybe there's some more urgency now with the Lakers that the latest I've heard is everything's status quo with Christian and Jared, but maybe that's changed in the past day or two or the past week, and I just haven't heard that. And something's there's some pessimism as to like when they'll be back. But as of now, I've been operating as if Jared's probably going to be back a little bit into the regular season. I don't think he'll be ready by opening night. And then Christian, sounds like that's more of like an early November-ish type target timeline. So with those two guys probably out at least a week or two into the regular season, could the Lakers get by with Jackson Hayes for a week or two? I think so. I think Jackson's fine in like a 14 to 18 minute a night role, especially depending on the opponent. But my kind of follow up, and I'm trying to dig on this and figure it out, is like, what is the reason for the urgency? Is it a setback with Vando and or Christian? Is it is it like they wanted to kind of see what this looked like in camp and the preseason, and it's not been to the level that they wanted or their level of expectation, so now they're feeling some type of urgency? Or is this sort of them floating this out there to kind of, cover their bases and sort of like look like they're going for it? Because I've been under the impression, and I've reported this, and like my intel has been the Lakers are going to be patient, and it's probably going to be after December 15th, if not after January 15th, probably closer to the trade deadline would be any type of move. And Rob Pelinka said it publicly, right? Like he said he wanted to see 30 games with this group before he makes a decision. So unless there's a setback with Christian Wood or Jared Vanderbilt, and to my knowledge, there's not been, but that's certainly, like with Lakers injury stuff, I've 5 years now covering the team. I've learned to be a little skeptical in terms of what the intel is and what the public messaging is. Like, so until we see Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood on the floor, I'm going to be slightly skeptical in terms of potential returns and all that stuff. I want to see those guys on the court. I want to see them practicing. I want to see them, in a stay ready group. Like, I want to see some of that stuff before I start to get optimistic in terms of them returning. But like that aside, I think the Lakers can get by with Jackson Hayes for a bit. If it is going to be longer for Vando and Christian, especially Christian, because he's more, he's a center. Vando's more of a 3/4. That is something that the Lakers have to really consider. Now, I guess my pushback would have been like, this probably should have been something they handled in the offseason, right? Like, and they could have, no, they didn't have an open roster spot after they had the player option guys come back and then sign Dalton and Bronny, but you could have salary dumped Christian Wood or Jackson Hayes or Cam Reddish onto a Utah, onto a Detroit, onto some of the other teams that had cap space at various points of the offseason, and then created the flexibility to go sign a player or to trade for someone. So that's where I'm like, why the sudden urgency 11 days or 12 days, whatever, before the regular season? That's the part that I'm trying to kind of figure out. My expectation, and again, this is all subject to change and all tentative, but my expectation is the Lakers will remain patient and make a move, if they do make a move, closer to January 15th and on, and closer to the trade deadline. That's I'm operating under that assumption, but again, we'll see. So I did this exercise with a mailbag a couple months ago where I went through every single NBA roster and looked at tradable contracts, the depth charts, and like tried to identify guys that could be available. So my tentative ranking for centers, and this is updated now because Wendell Carter was my number one guy, and he's off the board now that he signed that extension with Orlando. But one is Walker Kessler. Number two is Clint Capella, and this is in order of it's in order of like fit plus contract. So it's kind of an inexact science, but this is my ranking. So Walker Kessler 1, Clint Capella 2, Brandon Clark 3, Day'Ron Sharpe 4, Robert Williams 5, Nick Richards 6, Jonas Valanciunas 7, and Jakob Poeltl 8. And I think to me there's a tier 1 is Kessler and Capella. Kessler, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of salary, where Kessler's only making $2.7 million with a $4.9 million team option for next season. Clint Capella's on an expiring contract making $22.3 million. So to get to Clint Capella, that's potentially something like, I guess, Gabe and Vando. That is a lot. Or Rui and JHS or something like that. Like, so it is trickier to salary match with Clint Capella, where with Walker Kessler, you could trade a Cam or a Christian, but Utah's asking for 2 first-round picks. And that's where I don't see the Lakers giving up 2 first-round picks for Walker Kessler. I don't think Walker Kessler is worth 2 first-round picks. Clint Capella is probably a couple of those contracts plus a first, maybe a protected first. And look, if Vando's out, it makes more sense to potentially trade him at that point. So maybe that's just kind of dependent on his injury. But to me, those are the 8 realistic guys that could be available. Again, my list in order when factoring in how good they are, fit, age, contract. I have it Walker Kessler, Clint Capella, Brandon Clark, Day'Ron Sharpe, Robert Williams, Nick Richards, Jonas Valanciunas, and Jakob Poeltl. So really, I'd only give up a first for Kessler and Capella. I think everyone else I would only give up a second for. And even some of these guys I might push to protect the second. But I think all these guys I'd give up a second for, and only Kessler and Capella I'd give up a first for. And even then, Kessler, I guess, unprotected, I'd do. Capella, I'd probably push for lottery protected. So and some of these teams aren't giving up these guys. Some of these teams are going to ask for a lot more, but I would love to hear your order of the players. So let me know in the comment section on YouTube, which of these guys do you really like? Which of these guys would you be willing to go up a first for, or a pick in general, even if it's a second? Next question from Ballot Batman. Inside story behind the Buhaaaa intro. This is a fun one. I did the recent poll on YouTube about the intro, and 93% of you either like the intro and the yo-yo, or like at least one of the two. So they want to be sticking with them for now, unless I had a couple people complain in the comments that they couldn't get past the intro. And I guess that's the 7%. But I appreciate for those who don't like it, but still get past it. I appreciate you. For those who like one or both, I love you and I thank you. And so the backstory with the intro is that I do the Petros and Money show out here in LA about once a month, probably. And every time I come on, Petros Papadakis always goes, Jovan Buha, or like, some type of play on my name, always saying Buha. And just like, I mean, obviously you guys have heard the intro. So he would do that. And eventually when I was listening to podcasts and listening to shows and trying to think about how I wanted to structure my show and just the little details of things, I was like, it would be really cool if there was someone saying my name that was, not me saying my name. So I was like, what would that sound like? What would that be? And I was listening again to other shows, and then it just kind of clicked in my head of like, I really like how Petros always introduces me and always really over exaggerates my name and drags it out. And so I just asked them, hey, would it be cool if starting a podcast, would it be cool if he sent a clip of him saying my name, and I could own that and use that and put it in my intro. And so they sent that. They also sent one of him saying it's Buhaa's block, and maybe that's one that I eventually add in or flip or whatever, like that. Maybe that's a Buhaa's block version versus just a regular version. But I thought it's fun. I've always got a kick out of it. People have fun saying my name, and especially the Buhaaaa part. But I really like the intro, and seems like most of you do too. So I'm gonna keep using it for now. Next question from @CrownRoyalPoppy_. Trade deadline comes around. Lakers are top 4 in the West. Can you give an example of a player you trade Max or Dalton for? This is an interesting one. I honestly, if the Lakers are top 4 in the West, I don't know if I mess with it. If like, it would have to be a no-brainer to trade either one of those guys. And I think based on the way that the Lakers have valued both Max and Austin in recent years, like going back to the Kyrie situation at the 2023 trade deadline, when the Lakers didn't want to put Austin or Max in a potential trade for Kyrie. And at that time, Kyrie was viewed as a toxic asset. There's a lot of stuff off the court that we don't need to relitigate. I look at Austin as a guy that very high threshold for them to trade. And then I think that the same will likely apply to Max and to Dalton. So I think it's going to have to be, I don't want to say like an all-star level player, because I think that there's exceptions, but like it would probably have to be that type of guy where the Lakers could cobble together a Vando or a Gabe or maybe both, and then like throw in one of the young guys and then a pick or two for like that type of no-brainer upgrade. So a guy that I think is interesting that like, and this would have to be things go south with Denver, or they just have to make some tough financial decisions, but like, is a Michael Porter Jr. available? And I know he's not quite an all-star level guy, but is he like maybe that type of guy? I don't think Jeremy Grant is that guy. I don't think Zach LaVine is that guy. I don't think Darius Garland is that guy. Just like kind of thinking about guys who could, like, I don't even think Trae Young. That's a complicated one, but I don't know. It's a really good question. I think it, like, I'm trying to think who's recently, like, I think Mikal Bridges, if he were available or had been available, if he was still in Brooklyn, that's the type of guy. Like, I think if you're giving up those two guys, you want, or you know, one or both, you're going to want like a top 40 guy, top 35 guy. And outside of that, I don't know if you do it, and I don't know if the Lakers do it. So I think if they're top 4 with this group, I think they'll go for it. I just think they probably try and keep Max and Dalton to extend the window post LeBron and potentially even post AD. And it's more so than Rui, Vando, and Gabe are on the table rather than the young guys. And it's like, can we attach a pick to one or a couple of these guys, or even D'Lo too, one or a couple of these guys, and upgrade that way rather than, because really, like, I think the Lakers, I mean, they've needed two-way play. They've needed young athletic wings. Like, Max checks both of those boxes. Dalton seems to be checking at least the young athletic wing part. And I think the defense has been better than anticipated up to this point. So I think they try and keep both of those guys along with, I think it ends up just being, they keep LeBron, AD, Austin, Dalton, Max, and Bronny, and everyone else is available to be traded. Last question from @George Santiago. How much do wins matter in the preseason? Does it depend on what the players needed to execute? Does it matter more to the end of the bench/G League players? So this is something I touched on a little bit earlier when discussing Quincy Olivari and how he's expected to play at an 11 out of 10, right? Because he's fighting for his NBA life. He's trying to make earn a two-way spot or make an NBA roster. And it makes sense why he would play harder than guys like a Bronny or a JHS. So I do think in general that the end of bench G League guys, like, this is their livelihood that is not guaranteed. So from that perspective, like, just basic human instinct that they're going to try harder, or they at least should be if they're serious about it. So that I think, like, that's relatively straightforward. Now on the matter of wins and if it matters, I'm going to read to you the Lakers preseason record and their starts over the last 3 years. So let's go back to 2021, 2022, which is the first Russ season. They go 0-6 in the preseason. They start the year 8-9. Next season, Darvin's first year, they go 1-5 in the preseason. They start that year 2-10. Next season, which was last season, Darvin's second year, they go 2-4 in the preseason. They start the season 3-5. So small sample size, 3 years, but I do think, especially with this group, and that's all we can go off of is what this group has done. When they have not performed well in the preseason, they've gotten off to slow starts. And this is, they have 3 home games before a 5-game road trip. If you combine these 6 road preseason games, 11 of the Lakers' first 14 games are on the road. And that could get ugly quickly if this team does not come with the requisite focus and execution, if JJ isn't pushing the right buttons, and if guys aren't locked in and performing well. So I think the preseason matters. I think these games matter, the wins matter, and LA already lost a couple games, so is what it is. But I think they should be aiming to go at least 3-3. And look, they'll probably lose at least one of the next 3. So again, that could, if you go 2-1, you finish 3-3. But I think they should be trying to win these games, and within reason, right? You don't want to play LeBron in 80, 30 minutes. You don't want to overexert. Again, JJ mentioned guys like Max and Gabe and Cam and their workload, and what the medical and training staff is deeming as appropriate. So you want to win within those parameters of certain guys on certain nights aren't going to play as much. You do have a back-to-back, so you got to be cautious with that. And maybe that's, maybe you rest guys, or you only play them a quarter, or whatever they deem as the right plan for the rest of the preseason. But I think it matters. I think it matters more than people think. And again, just looking at the recent track record of the Lakers have not performed well in the preseason the last 3 years. They've gotten out to slow starts in all 3 years. And this is where I want to give JJ Redick some flowers of I don't think the Lakers have that comeback under last season. And I don't want to say under Darvin Ham, because I don't necessarily want to make it a Darvin versus JJ thing, but I think the culture and the way that the young guys played last year, especially remember that Washington game where they had a double-digit lead, starters come out or closers come out, bench guys come in, and they blow that lead within a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden AD and LeBron and those guys have to come back in for the final 30 seconds to preserve that game. And I don't want to say that's not going to happen under JJ, because it very well could, especially as JHS and Maxwell Lewis were a couple of those guys out there. I think Castleton might have been as well. I don't fully remember the lineup, but some of those guys are still on the roster. So that could say more about those guys than it could be about the coaching. But I think already some of the progress we've seen in second halves and fourth quarters with some of the young guys, the energy, the execution. I actually thought the offense looked pretty good at times in the fourth quarter. So I think there's been progress in those regards. And for me, I think that is a testament to JJ and his coaching staff in helping instill that, helping play certain guys, and also helping identify certain guys and bringing them in for Exhibit 10 contracts. So I think that to me, this stuff matters. It matters. I don't think you want to overreact. And if the Lakers lose out the preseason, go 1-5, it's not this team sucks, gloom and doom. I'm not saying that by any means, but I also don't think it should be something that's overlooked or just it doesn't matter. Let's go through the motions, play guys for a quarter, a half, and let's just call it a night. I think that stuff carries over into the regular season. We've seen it with this group now 3 years in a row. And depending on how the rest of the preseason goes, might tell us what this team is going to look like early on in the season. But that'll do it for today's mailbag episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications so you don't miss a video, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back next week. I will talk to you then.